Story with Julie Roberts on Bio Out Loud, YT Kubuli Mondays, 7 to 8 p.m. on DBS Radio.
Attention all gospel music artists in the Commonwealth of Dominica. National Institute for Praise Production, NIPP, is proud to present the first segment of our second annual Gospel Song Contest, the NIPP Gospel Song Audition. This is your chance to showcase your talent and compete for a chance to win amazing prizes, including studio recording time and cash awards. The NIPP Gospel Song Audition will be held on July 28, 2023, at the NIPP headquarters on 76 King George V Street, Roseau. This event is open to all gospel music artists in the Commonwealth of Dominica who want to take their music to the next level. To register for the audition, simply visit us at 76 King George V Street upstairs Robinson's Bakery, call or WhatsApp us at 265-5462, or email us at nationalinstituteforpraise@gmail.com. Don't miss this incredible opportunity to be a part of the NIPP Gospel Song Contest and showcase your talent to the world. #NIPP Gospel Song Contest #Dominica Gospel Music #Gospel Music Audition #Sing for the Lord #Dominica Music Industry #NIPP Dominica.
Good evening, Dominica. Good evening, world. Good evening if you're joining us via Facebook Live. Good evening. If you're joining us on DBS Radio, good evening. Today is the 19th day of June 2023. I am Julie Roberts, and I wish to welcome anyone and everyone to this special episode of Bio Out Loud. Bio Out Loud this evening was sponsored by the National Institute for Praise. I've recently been contemplating on the way in which life is so fragile. We could have been here today, in 1 minute we're here, and next minute we're gone. That's why I believe that we ought to make the most of our precious time that we have here. Make life more beautiful, more impactful. The opportunities that we have, make the best from them, do something meaningful. And with that, I want to send condolences to Mr. James Rodney. He is a staff member here at DBS Radio, and also a former guest on the passing of his brother. Also to anyone else who is mourning, my condolences. Also, today I went to RDPS. So speaking of impactful, I would like to send greetings to the entire grade 6 class from RDPS Roosevelt Douglas Primary School, and also our special shout out to Malia, and she was the winner of the Julie Roberts Foundation Vision Board exercise at her school. Tomorrow I head to the Portsmouth Primary School at the St. John's Primary School, and we will be doing the same. I'd also like to say a special thank you to the hair salon who sponsored the gift for Malia. I will look them up later on so I can give the name, because when people give back, I like to shout them up publicly. So that's where we are this evening. I'm sending condolences and also love to the Roosevelt Douglas Primary School and the St. John's Primary School. It is now 5 minutes after 7, and we're about to begin this edition of Bio Out Loud. Tonight we have a very special guest who is a household name in Dominica through his political affiliation. However, this evening we want to know the man behind the politics. Our guest this evening is none other than the Honorable Ian Douglas. Good evening, Mr. Douglas.
Hi, good evening, Julie.
Do we still call you Honorable Ian Douglas?
No. I always actually, throughout my political life, I always like people calling me Ian.
Okay, so we'll be saying
some people,
Ian.
Some people like the moniker Doggy.
Okay. So, but honorable, is it normally like when you're still MP, or it just goes with the...
Yeah, it's the title that goes with the job. So,
okay.
Member of Parliament. MP,
okay.
Honorable. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I'm back to Ian.
You're back. I had Dennis. He is our tech guy here, great guy.
Mm.
Put a beautiful picture of the background in the background
Yes,
there.
yes.
You can identify it?
Very appropriate.
Is
Of course. Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so if you're at home and you're listening on the radio, you can come on over and join us on the Facebook Live and also on YouTube for the most part. I'm always stressing my technician because I'm never sure when we're on YouTube, but we're definitely live on Facebook and on radio. So, good evening once more. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of generic questions which we will start with this evening. And the first one is, what is your first childhood memory?
Wow. My first childhood memory is actually growing up in a small community in Portsmouth, really, called Zikak. And those of you all who are familiar with the Portsmouth area would know the area east of the Benjamin's Park. So I remember growing up there, running through the fields because there is an estate which is close by, which is called the Sugarloaf Estate, owned by Silma Jupini. And there's the river, if you know the Indian River, that river runs for about maybe 2 or 3 miles up, although the boats don't go all the way up. But there are some lovely bathing areas in our, what we call in our local parlance, bassin, or basins, that we used to go by, and there's an orange grove of orange trees in that area. So, as young guys, we spend a lot of time either going for mangoes during the summer season, or picking coconuts, or roasting breadfruits, or going and bathing the river. I think that, and these are some of my early memories. There was.
So you were doing this before 5, like around 5 years old? You're already doing that?
Yeah, about that.
What?
Because the area where I grew up was like a big yard, and our neighbors, they had a lot of young people my age growing up in that vicinity, in that area. So we were all the Zikak boys. Would frequent each other, play cricket, softball cricket, play football, because the park was just the Benjamin's Park was just there. And there were a lot of guava trees at the time in and around the Benjamin's Park that we used to, you could go under those guava trees, pick guavas, chill out, hang out, that sort of thing. So it was between, I would say, the Benjamin's Park and the, in the mountain area, that's what it's called, that's what the river is called. Mountain. It's close to 1 mile area where we would walk up and then cross the big fields, the orange groves, and get into the river and spend.
Well, I've learned something tonight, because I didn't know that there were ever orange trees there
At the mountain area.
in Zikak area. I thought orange trees was like, or it would that cluster of orange trees maybe in Syndicate. I didn't realize Portsmouth once had that.
In the Sugarloaf, it's a Sugarloaf estate owned, like I said, by Silma Jupini.
Okay.
So the western half of the estate, which runs along the Grand Bay Street, which is the street running west to east along the Benjamin's Park and going up to 1 mile. So on the other side of the road, the southern side of the road, the estate runs from Dumlek office going all the way up to the 1 mile agricultural station. So that was really our playground. Either you were catching crabs in the swamp of what is called Baron, because Mr. Baron, Frank Baron, has some land in that area which runs like opposite at the back of Dumlek, going all the way to the Indian River at the back there. So that whole area was called Baron. So we spent, as young men, we spent a lot of time in there climbing the coconut trees, picking jelly, coconut, roasting breadfruits, like I said, bathing in the river, and playing a lot of football in the park too, in Benjamin's Park. So that probably happened from about my toddler, infant stages. And then maybe just before Hurricane David in 1979, my parents moved from Zikak and moved down to Portsmouth, where my dad bought a house close to the waterfront where we live right now. And that is where another part of my childhood took off. Close to the jetty. At that time, you used to have the schooners, the wooden schooners, coming from Antigua, carrying all of the fresh produce, Antigua, St. Martin and stuff. Long before the Portsmouth captains actually go. You used to have some Portsmouth captains, so some boats from Portsmouth and some boats from Antigua, going back and forth on the jetty. At that jetty was on the Borough Square. So, and a lot of kids would go there and fish and dive. And after they finish, load the boats with the fresh produce. You used to have a lot of banana trash, which they used to cover it. So, had some big trucks coming all the way from Marigot, Wesley, Woodford Hill with fresh produce. And then we were very good swimmers. So, you jump off the deep end of the jetty and play hoop under the jetty, in between the pillars and under the trash. So you have to be a really good swimmer.
And no one taught you to swim, you just learned through the experience.
Well, when you were younger, the older guys would throw you off the deep end. So you have to just deal with it. You have to learn to swim by force. So that's how we learn to swim. And that's how. So I grew up really from about 9 years throughout my teenage life, really being what we call a jetty boy, a kawat. Hanging out with those guys who would go chasing the yachts with their rowboats and stuff.
I think that's just a cultural part of being raising up in Portsmouth. Everybody have this kawat boat. Well, I think back in the day, now we're a little more reserved and
Portsmouth
indoors.
Portsmouth is a marine town.
Yes.
So 4 out of every 5 persons you speak to in Portsmouth in some way is connected to the marine industry.
Yes.
Either they own a boat, or their father own a boat, or they involved in huckstering, or the wife has a shop that is supplied from imported stuff from St. Martin or Guadeloupe. And when we moved down to Portsmouth, close to the bayfront, my neighbor was a captain, a guy called Desmond Desrochers.
Yes.
Right. And Desmond had boats from even before I was born. So and he had 2 sons who themselves were very good. From small, they could do basic mechanic on the boat. They could plot a course, all of those things. So for our summers, we were out, going to Guadeloupe, going to St. Martin, going to St. Lucia. On the boat, So most of my summers actually was spent sailing on boats. There's one of the most popular captains in Dominica is a guy from Portsmouth called Captain Neville Wade.
Oh, yes.
Captain Wade actually, his first boat, he took an engine from a Land Rover and put it into the boat. So you have to be clutching and changing gears in the boat like a car. And he has a son slightly older than myself, but, around my age group, called Ned. Ned owns 2 boats right now, 2 steel boats in Portsmouth right now. So I grew up going to Guadeloupe on those small boats. There was a time we went to Guadeloupe, and Ned wasn't even tall enough to stand and read the compass. So they had to put a wooden box, like a crate. He stood on the crate and steer. So from that young age, we learn to steer. You have to watch. You have to what is called watch. And that term means everybody have to take turns in the wheelhouse wherever you go into at sea. So you have to look out for other boats. You have to ensure that you have to steer the boat. You have to learn to steer. You have to learn to read the compass and make sure you stay on course. Or you have to be in the engine room, make sure that nothing is leaking, the fuel, the oil lines, So I learned all those things from a young age. So I've been associated with marine life of Portsmouth, from a very young age. Very interesting as a young man growing up.
Wow.
I remember in the summer of 1988, Captain Wade had just come from the Dominican Republic with a shipment of sugar for Barbados. So we said a short trip, just go drop the sugar off in Barbados and come back a week or 2 if at most. So we went. I just jumped on the boat and we went with the rest of the crew and stuff. Actually, I think Nantan was on that same trip. Emmanuel
Barbados, all the way out there.
Yeah.
Not even sure it's in the Caribbean.
And
wow.
when we got to Barbados and we offloaded the sugar, we were on our way back to Dominica. We stopped off in a port in St. Lucia called Viewfort because he had another boat called Humility, which is another story by itself. And when we stopped off there to check out, his brother, who was the captain of that boat at the time, he got a call for a shipment, to pick up a shipment in Point Lisas in Trinidad. So we turned around instead of coming to Dominica and headed to Trinidad to pick up the load of steel in Point Lisas, Trinidad, for Curacao. And then we dropped off the steel in Curacao. And he said, being that we are in Curacao, he can't really come back up here. We might as well go to Venezuela.
Wow.
So we went to a port in Venezuela called Chichirivici. to pick up a shipment of cement for St. Martin. And we went across to St. Martin, dropped the cement off. Well, we had to sell the cement, so we spent some time.
Well, you have to
St.
find
Martin.
market for this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then when we offloaded the cement in St. Martin, that time you were on the boat for about a month and a half,
And you have no cell phones to call home.
Our cell phone wasn't really in use at that time. Maybe one or two people leave all that. And after we did that, instead of coming to Dominica, we went back to Santo Domingo for a load of sugar. And when we got to Santo Domingo, the sugar plant was broken down. So we had to wait and spend about 3 weeks in the Dominican Republic in a place called San Pedro y Macorís, a port in the Dominican Republic. So you see how long my Spanish goes back?
Yes.
And then we came back to Dominica. Actually, when we got back to Dominica, it was already September. School had already started. Yep. So my boat life, just growing up, and I just and I just loved it. I loved it. I mean, I would jump on any one of those captains on their boats, Errol Hill or any one of those guys, and just go to St. Martin.
Yes.
Go and chill in St. Martin and go and help and come back home. So it was fun growing up.
Our next, really fun, a lot of fun. Our next generic question might be public knowledge, but still, who are your parents and where are they from?
All right, okay. So everybody knows my father, Mike Douglas, the first child of, first of 24 kids. 16, my grandfather had 16 children with his wife. Actually, we were told when growing up that Granny was pregnant 19 times. And I think she had some stillbirth and so, but 16 siblings, he was the first. Although he wasn't first of his father, because he had another brother who was before him, called Gaff, short Gaff. It was my father. And then my mother is actually not Dominican by birth. She's Jamaican, but they met in England, because both of them, she went to England during those days when West Indians were moving to England to do nursing, and he was in the Royal Air Force. And that's how they met. And then decided my first brother, Robert, was actually born in England. And then in 1969, they moved back to Dominica because I think his dad wanted some help with the business and stuff, because my grandfather was involved in the estate, coconut production. He had a cinema, the store. He had a couple other shops and stuff. So my dad moved back home with his family. And that's how my mom actually ended up in Dominica. And being a nurse, she got attached to the Portsmouth Hospital.
Yes.
And the rest is history.
And then one even named after her now.
Exactly. That's why. Yes. Because, so from that point, so I've been the better part of what? Let's say she retired when my dad died in 1992. So about for 30 years, she's been involved in nursing. When she left the Portsmouth Hospital, in the 80s, she was a tutor at the nursing school in Roseau. When Dad died, she felt she couldn't do this back and forth every day, up and down. So she retired from nursing, but then went on to help establish the Catholic educational institution called Calls in Portsmouth, and she's been there for since the 90s. Maybe Calls was established for around about maybe 95 or thereabout, or maybe earlier.
Yes.
And so I grew up in that kind of environment. Those of you listening to me who knew my grandmother was a lady called Madame. Some people call her Marabot. Some people call her the mother of sorrows, because she had a supermarket, she had a store. Well, her husband had a store, but she was the one actually running it. Yeah. And she would, there was this practice that she developed that my father and my uncle, even at a young age, had to participate in. She would do liquor packages of flour, sugar, rice, milk, whatever, every Saturday. And they had to go around and deliver it to some of the less fortunate people and some of the poor people, even in Portsmouth. So a lot of people don't understand where our political success comes from. And I say our, meaning my father before me, because my father first won the Portsmouth seat in 1970 until he died in 1992. Then Uncle Rosie came and ran in 92. And he died in 2000, and then I ran the first election in December of 2000, and just retired last year. So that's the better part of 22 years, 22 years to be exact, and have been involved in politics even long before I was even elected to serve. So we grew up in a philosophy of service way back from my grandmother. Yeah. I was just I went up to celebrate the Feast of St. Anthony, because there's a side of me also that is very religious and very involved in the church and stuff. So I went up to celebrate the Feast of St. Anthony last week. I think last week Tuesday was the feast celebration, or Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday.
And I was saying to myself, it's remarkable that my grandfather actually built that church, with his own funds, built it, because he was originally from a place called Deguabalata at the back of Penville. And his family was very poor and stuff, and his mother sent him to sell limes at the market on a donkey. That time they saw the donkey, and the donkey had wooden boxes on the side, so the limes were in the box. And he had to go through from Penville. And no road there. We're talking about track from Penville through Capuchin.
I even afraid the road that's there now.
Exactly.
From behind.
Thank you very much. Some people can hike it. The trail, the Waitikobuli trail, actually passes along that route. And he came down, sold the line, sold the donkey, and took the money and went over to Curacao.
Curacao keep coming up.
Yeah. So that is really a background of the influences upon me and my life, in shaping my life.
Yes.
You were talking about being young too. And like I told you, we moved from Zikak to Portsmouth by the Borough Square area when I was about 9. But also I got involved in football at a very young age in what we used to call the Mang. What people know now as the Benjamin's Park, with all of the Cricket Institute and
when you said the Benjamin's Park, I wanted to ask you, was there really a park at that time?
Well, it wasn't really a park. It was called a mang because it was swampy.
Mangrove.
I guess that's where the word comes from. But it was very waterlogged. Most times, when rain fall, you just played in mud. You kick the ball for 2 yards and it's stopped in mud. And, and I didn't have a lot of stamina. So I was struggling to actually play football. I was a little chubby on the heavy side, when I was growing up. So I said the best place for me to play is in the goal. You don't have to run too much. You don't have to dribble. You don't have to have too much skills. So I spent all of my teenage life actually playing football with a club. Some might disagree with me, but one of the best clubs in Portsmouth. One of the best, because there are a number of them before we got established, called Kokutong Stars. And
people still talk about Kokotong Stars.
Yeah. People talk about us a lot because we kind of developed not just as a football team, but a club, an organized club, and not just a sports club, but we started getting involved in the life of the community. So we were organizing sports days, sporting events, fun sports, lime and spoon, bottle and thread, that kind of thing. When carnival time came around, we sent to St. Martin and print our shirts, and on the Monday we'd put on some funny stuff. Like I remember one year we got old jackets and stuff and put them on. On the Tuesday, we printed our T-shirts with our nicknames at the back of it and the logo of the club. We started actually sponsoring princess shows where we'd build costumes for the young ladies, the flower costumes and stuff.
And what is the I can't remember the name now, the bag thing. I know you're really
right. Or sensei. Exactly. I'm into sensei.
Yes.
I actually built my own sensei for a number of years and actually jump in my sensei. One of the years when I was Minister of Tourism, I actually came up to address the opening of Carnival in my sensei. I just love
And
sensei.
you can actually make it from scratch.
And I make my costumes from scratch. Scratch. I sit down and nice and sew them and just come up with the ideas in my head.
Thread.
Yeah. And a lot of the princess costumes and the queen costumes, because I got involved in carnival and organizing, and I would write the talents out myself and teach the young ladies. Just actually yesterday I was talking to when I was at PSS, we used to have this Miss PSS. So each form would have a student representing their form in a pageant. And I wrote a talent for one of the young ladies participating in that competition. So my dad used to travel a lot because of the politics. He was always out, and he loved music. So he would bring home a lot of CDs, a lot of music. So I got into a lot of music from an early age, listening to good music, reggae, Bob Marley and those people. And he brought home a CD by Whitney Houston at the time. And I always remember that song which goes, nothing should matter, not when love grows inside.
We just find what you gotta do.
And I said, boy, wow, that song will make a good talent.
Yes.
And I sat down and actually wrote a talent out, where a young girl was in a dilemma. She was teenage, pregnant, she was pregnancy in school, and she had a choice to make whether she would abort the baby or whether she would go forth with the child, not knowing that the girl was actually pregnant at the time and going through that very dilemma.
The person that you wrote the talent
yes,
for.
and I didn't know. So it was years later. We have this nickname when we meet each other, and if she's listening now, she'll know. Because I think just yesterday we were talking about it and I was laughing about it and explaining to somebody. We call each other partner in crime. That's what she called it. Partner in crime, you go partner in crime, you know? Because of that story.
Yes.
I was always involved. I worked with Elma Aaron a lot. Elma would Elma, even up to today.
She's still involved.
Elma's still involved in pageantry. So I would help to write the talent, and then help to practice in the speech of the girls, and stuff. And I started doing that from school, from Portsmouth Secondary School.
And you feel like the football club actually got you into
the
right direction?
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember first serenade, if Calty is listening now, first serenade, their first gigs they did in Portsmouth was the Cocoton football club who brought them down. There was a disco called Night Fever, and we used to ask the manager to do stuff there. And then also there was this credit union, not the credit union as it is now, but it was a wooden single bungalow building.
Same space.
The office where you'd actually go to do your credit union transaction, save your money and stuff, was about maybe 1/4 of the building. And then there was a large hall, like a conference hall, where bands would come down to play. So what my sports club, Cocoton Stars, would do, we would invite those bands. Like we started off with RSB. RSB was from Kinfield with Maxim and Powell and these guys. And then later on, we started working in first serenade, Calty, and this guy, Calty, and myself are still very good friends, even up till today. And we started raising funds because at the same time we was buying our uniform, our own boots. Less fortunate guys in the club who couldn't afford to buy their gear. The club would sponsor stuff, sponsor princess shows, and we got involved in a lot of different things. Right up until I left Dominica to go and study to go to university in 1992, and we were still existing. And then a couple of the key members of the group. There was once we sat down and wrote calypsos for one of the guys who could sing very well. There are 3 brothers in the group called the Castle Brothers. There's Hillsborough John Baptist, Hillier John Baptist, and the guy who runs the hi-fi now called DJ Power. His name is Glenn John Baptist. Glenn was in Cocoton. Yeah. So we actually helped Hillier to write calypso, and he went right up to the finals. And that year, only one Calypsonian who beat him was a guy called Hurricane, and most people in Dominica know Hurricane as a big name. I think Hurricane sang a miracle, something, and he came out of a thing like a genie, came out of a lamp, like a guy said, "Oh God, we can't win that shit," But we came first runner up.
Yes.
Superior Castle was his calypso name, and he was part of the club, But then members migrated, some members moved off. Aldrin Lawrence, who actually runs the pizza shop. Aldrin was like our main guy. Aldrin and another guy called Eric Murray was the president, and Aldrin was the treasurer and stuff. But we actually really started off playing football. And I went way up to university. When I was at Kville, one of the guys who was at Kville is a guy in Dominica called Edgar Hunter. Edgar worked with the Ministry of the Environment. And Edgar has some brothers in Portsmouth that he would come down to spend summer holidays with in Cocoton. So he knew I could play. So he told him, "Nah, man, Ian is a good goalkeeper." And I started playing on campus. So in the first semester, we would have different faculties. So the Faculty of Law would play the Faculty of Arts, the Faculty of Science would play, and we had a competition. And then in the second semester now, we had island competition. So Trinidad would have a team, Jamaica had a team, Barbados as a team. We were too small as the small islands to form one team. So we formed what is called the Combined Islands. So the Antiguans, Dominicans, St. Lucians, Grenadians, Vincentians on one team, playing football. And I actually ended up representing the campus as the campus goalkeeper. Yeah, as the campus goalkeeper.
I thought you played like center or striker.
No, I could only goalkeeper. I never had enough stamina to play a 90-minute game. In fact, I think there's a veterans game coming up, I believe, on Sunday coming.
Yes.
And the guys want me to play. So I tell me, okay, break up the match into 4 quarters. Let's have a fet match and allow people to go down on the sideline to have a few libations and come back in the game. And if that is the arrangement,
You're
then
playing.
yeah, I can play a
I
quarter.
think double O playing too.
Right,
Yes,
right.
yes.
So all of the old guys going to come out, and I think some guys from Roseau is going to come. They're going to come down. A veteran team also
Yes.
is going to
Okay,
come down.
tell us a little bit more about the activities you did in college, because not just football.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I started off, like I said, from Boston Secondary School, and I probably was involved in everything from hiking to drama. We had a drama group. There was a group in PSS called Domi Vision. Domi Vision was involved in all sorts of social activities.
What does that mean, though? Dummy Visio?
It's Dominica's vision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's basically what it
Translates
means.
to,
Yeah, translates
okay.
to. I was involved in drama, like I said, involved in different plays, involved in the running of the talk shop at school. I mean, you name it. I was involved in almost everything that was happening at Boston Secondary School. We used to have jams. WCK actually was just starting off, and they actually had a combo. It wasn't even the full band. It was Cornell and Wackers, I believe, on guitar, and maybe Keith on the bass. And they would come to PSS, in the big hall, in the auditorium, where we would have fundraisers and stuff. We'd hike all over Dominica. There were Peace Corps who would come down from the US. One of them was a guy called Mr. Monson, and then there was another guy called Mr. Gamble. And we'd go all over Dominica hiking. I remember once we went hiking probably in the heights of Grand Bay, coming from, where were we coming from now? And we ended up lost somewhere. We didn't know which track to take. I think we met a farmer, and he told us where to pass to find our way again. It was just fun. It was fun. It was a lot of fun at PSS.
So you went to PSS, and
Yes.
after PSS, did you move on to State College or?
Yeah, yes. After PSS, I went on to the Dominica State College, which was at the time the Clifton Dupini Community College.
Dupini, yeah.
We were at the back of grammar school at that time. The State College was only established in maybe about 2002 or thereabouts. So I went to college in 1990. I went to Dominica State College. Yeah, well, C4 call.
Yeah.
Clifton Dupini Community College. And again, got involved in the life of the school, and all the activities, the fundraising and stuff. And when I finished that, I did well enough to
go overseas?
to go on, to move on.
Well, we know you're very articulate and diligent now, but did you always like school?
No. I that's why I told you I was a very distracted student at school. I would probably get involved more in the extracurricular life of the school than school itself. But I just realized when I got to fifth form at the Postal Secondary School that I had to get serious.
Yes.
And CXC was approaching, and if I had to do as well as I could.
Yes.
And I in fact ended up doing very well and went on. And the rest is history.
Okay. So we all know Michael. When we hear Michael Douglas or even Rosie Douglas, we know how charismatic they were. But Mike Douglas being your father, and just tell us a little bit about what the father-son relationship was like, or what was he like being a father in the household? Was he the man that needed you to sit at the table, or what was it like?
Oh boy, Dad, he was very strict. I mean, he was fun, to be with, but you have to have your priorities right. So like your homework, your schoolwork, school, and he was very he stressed a lot on the academics, the importance of doing well at school to set a good foundation for what your life after should be like. So your report cards and stuff, failures were frowned upon, and a beating was waiting for you. Yeah, he loved to beat. Anytime you fall out of line, a beating was lined up for you. So yeah, he wasn't messing around. Very strict person. Church every Sunday, no matter where you were, you had to get up and find yourself in church on Sunday. My mother and my father insisted on that, and then my father had a practice that after church every Sunday you had to come for breakfast. Everybody would be around the table. And he liked generating discussion, or to know what your point of view is. He was always that kind of person. So we that's why but that's probably where initially my power of speech developed, because you had to interact verbally. You had to be able to express yourself. So all my siblings, in fact, the entire extended family is like that. All the cousins and the aunties, of course. People know people like Tiani and these people out there like to talk, and Sean and all of them. Actually, Sean and Tiani actually grew up in my household because they were raised by my mother. Tiani's dad was still in Canada. It's Uncle Rosie, because Uncle Rosie was involved in the civil rights movement in Canada at the time, you know, fighting on behalf of black people and the struggles that they went through. And there was there's what is called the computer riots at Sir George Williams University, where he went to prison for 2 years. So Tiani and actually his sister Debbie grew up with my grandmother, and Tiani grew up in the same household. And then Auntie Eleanor, who is Sean's mother, Eleanor Malambert, as she's more popularly known, Auntie Eleanor, she was in England, and that's why she and my mother are very close right now, because they spend a lot of time in England, even here, they spend a lot of time even now. So she sent Sean down, and Sean grew up actually in our household. So I was always around a lot of kids. So it was my big brother Robert, and then Tiani's name is actually Robert.
Oh,
Yeah, Robert Douglas is his name.
why is Elmo? You say so with malicious?
No. So we used to actually call them Robert for Rosie and Robert for Mike to differentiate which Robert you were speaking about at any given time. And then there was Sean
Yes.
and myself. You know, I remember once we Sean and Tiani was very troublesome, very deviant. I don't know if I would remember. I told you we grew up in a big yard with other neighbors and other children and stuff. So I don't know if it was to get some ripe bananas on the tree, or I don't know what. They cut down the neighbor's banana tree for cutlass, and the man went to complain. I think the man was Mr. Ford. He was a shoemaker, and my father liked to beat, so beating was lined up for them. You know, but it was fun, you know, growing up with them. You know, I remember we had an aquarium at home once also, and I don't know, somebody killed the fish in the aquarium. And I, as a little boy, as my father stepped in there, I said, "Daddy, somebody killed the fish." Another beating was following, you know. So, yeah, so they didn't really like me much because I would sell out the vibes, you know. But
Tiani told me once he convinced Sean to put his ice pop in a napkin.
And go to school with it and tell him hold it for recess. But Sean coming from England don't know what ice pop is. Yes. And the whole thing melted in his pocket.
So your story sung true.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm telling you. If he told you so, it's true. It's true.
They're definitely
we had real
solution.
fun. We would go up, all of us, all the cousins and stuff would go up on the estate. You know, granddad had an estate in Hampstead, and we have a country house up there. Even now, where my aunts are, Irma and Auntie Irma and Auntie Jacqueline, we'd go up there and spend summers. And granddad had a big fowl. What do you call it? A poultry production. Not even a coop. A coop is a little thing.
Yes.
But he must have had at least maybe 1,000 or more birds in that thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember once, while we were up there, we would go up there and spend summers because they had the Hampstead house, which is still there. We got up one morning to make breakfast, and there was nothing for breakfast. So we went on the farm. They said, let's go and get some eggs in the fowl house. But when we got to the fowl house now, the fowl house was locked. So I had to pass in the drain where the fowl shit was coming down, creep and go, and because I was the smallest, so I could fit in the drain and come up to get in the fowl, to get the eggs, to pass it for them, and come back out to go and make breakfast, go and make scrambled eggs. And
eat eggs after that. Yeah. Oh, my
go
Lord, no.
Batibu, where the ants are now on the beach, and you know, in the copra house, the river. It was just fun. Granddad had a lot of sheep, maybe about 100 or more. You know, you go up there, fellas, some bents would come, you kill a sheep, and you go down on the beach, you make a pot, you know, and that was our summers. And you know,
so it definitely used to be a community open area, not isolated.
Oh yeah,
like people think that it is.
Yeah,
right now.
Oh yeah,
so
definitely open.
It is not the custom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
All right, so. Upon returning to Dominica, we know you studied law at Cave Hill.
Yeah.
Your intention was to become a politician?
I have always been involved in politics. I can go back to 1980. I was young at the time, but my father was actually like the deputy prime minister in the interim government after the fall of the Patrick John regime. They put together a skeleton government to run the country called the interim government, which was headed by a guy called Oliver Seraphin, more popularly known as OJ. So OJ was the prime minister, and my father, Mike, was the deputy prime minister and minister of finance. But they eventually end up forming their own Labour Party and isolating because my father was fired from the Patrick John Labour Party in about 1976. And then by 1979, maybe half of his cabinet had resigned on him because of stuff that there's another political discussion. So my dad ended up being the deputy leader of the Democratic Labour Party, as it was called. But then he had efforts to bring the party back together. So in and about 1983 or 84, in preparation for the 1985 elections, all the warring factions of Labour, Patrick John Labour, OJ and Mike Labour, then there was another set of fellas called the Alliance, Dominica Liberation Movement Alliance, which Rosie was a part of, because they were more left in their ideology. They were more aligned to Cuba and Russia. They were more socialist in their orientation. So all of them came back together in a rally in the Battley area, and they signed the Battley Declaration of Unity. And I was always there as a young boy. I was there.
But you're around 16 around that time.
Yeah,
so,
man.
So
yeah.
in the back of your mind at that point, you... Okay.
Yeah, that's why I am observing, and I believe I would say by 1985, I must have been on the platform already, speaking or connecting the speakers, because my father would use me when he was going around to announce his meetings. He'd put the speakers on the top of his car, and he'd have a little radio playing music, and I'd have to hold the microphone close to the speaker when he wasn't talking, So from those days, and I'd go around to different meetings with him. I mean, it was just from those days I was just involved in the politics and being so involved in my community, in the church.
So why you studied law then?
Because of my strengths. My strength has always been in those types of subjects from Portsmouth Secondary School. I love literature, especially West Indian literature. I must have read every West Indian novel at that age. I mean, A House of Mr. Biswas by Bathwaite. In The Castle of My Skin by George Lamin. I mean, you name it. All of those books. I had a big wardrobe, not a wardrobe, a cupboard, if you call it that, a bookshelf. A bookshelf is a better term. Full of books. I was just a voracious reader. I had the boys and stuff, So I was always that way inclined. Literature. I always loved history. Always. I mean, when I studied things like the Haitian Revolution, the Petit Gouin and the Gouin and the blacks in Haiti and Toussaint Louverture and what he had to do to free the people of Haiti. That's why people don't even understand what Haiti is going through right now. But way back then, France charged Haiti, I believe it was 40 million francs for their freedom. 40 million francs at that time probably was worth maybe $20 billion.
Yes.
Maybe even today, Haiti still paying France. So I was always intrigued by history, slavery.
Yes.
How we came about here, the Middle Passage. If you get down deep into the Middle Passage, about 10 or 15 million black people died just on the Middle Passage,
I know.
So I just love history. And then the plantation slavery was another story again by itself. The post-emancipation period, when those countries were trying to come together in federation. And so history, literature, and then when I went to Sifokol, I did sociology. I was always that way inclined. And then as fate would have it, I decided to go to Kville to do law. My father actually had just died. Actually, when I applied to go to university, my father was alive. He actually signed my application. That was in about October or November of 1991. But then in February of 1992, I was actually teaching. I taught at St. Andrews High School. When I left college, I taught literature and history at St. Andrews High School. So a lot of my students now, some of them even become teachers. So Donna Riviere Edwards, who's Carissa's sister, there's another good friend of mine called Bobby. A lot of children in the Marigot area, Wesley, Woodford Hill, Kalinago territory, I taught them. And then I left St. Andrews High School and I went to PSS to teach before I went to study. So a lot of these students you see around like Shem and Danley, who is the principal now of Northeastern Comprehensive. All of those young guys, I taught them at school.
We quickly run out of time. I want to read some of the comments because we have people in the comments. Someone say, good night, Mr. Historian Ian Douglas and host. Good night. Superior Castle. We love to hear Mr.
Yes.
I'm going to miss you in the House of Assembly real bad. This is from Althea St. Hillier. Hurricane won the crown when he sang Miracle Indeed. We have someone say PSS won the 1986 under 16 football schools
That is
national
correct.
competition.
I was
he
the
was on that
goalkeeper.
team.
That's right. That is the first football championship that PSS actually won.
Really?
We beat. I think it was the Roseau Boys School, I believe at the time, or grammar school. One Love, and we scored early. I think Jerome Romain, who actually ended up being one of the first Olympians. He went to the Olympics for Dominica. He, I think, was our captain, and I think he was the best midfielder of that year. We had another guy who went into the police force. A lot of people know him by his nickname XPD. His name is Martin Walters, was on that team. Then I think Cuthbert Sabin may have come across from Seventh-day Adventist School into, and also a lot of those guys end up being in the same football club I told you about, Kokotong. You know, because before we had the schools competition, we used to have under 16 where clubs could play, and actually we didn't want to play for the school. We wanted to play for our club, Kokotong, Aldrin, myself, and our principal was Mr. James at the time. Actually threatened to suspend us if we didn't play for the school. There was another good guy who is still in Portsmouth called Frankie. Marcus Antoine Frankie played for PSS, and we had a formidable team. A good team.
Well, we have some people here remember. So you're getting a lot of love on the live, and I'm pretty sure he'll read them later.
Yeah.
But we have people talk about Macpherson Paul, and his
Mackie,
trophy still there, they said.
That's right. Yeah, Mackie is actually the brother of Caesarina Paul. You know Caesarina?
Yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah, man. Yep.
Yes, so thank you for the comments, and we invite you to continue commenting. We have someone laughing about the ice pop for recess and Tiani. Yes. So we run out of time, but so we are aware that you have served as a minister and all these things, but now you've recently been appointed to be the Dominican ambassador to Cuba.
That's right.
I know you just told me, see how far back your Spanish goes.
Yep.
But are you prepared? Are you ready? Are you excited? Do you speak the language? Are you going to get a professional interpreter?
I want to become as fluent and proficient as I can possibly become in Spanish. So that's my mindset. I think I'm ready for Cuba. I think I've been in and around the Cuban scene for all my life. Like I said, my Uncle Rosie actually grew up. Uncle Rosie lived, in the same house, in the same home with my father for a number of years, right? And I grew up seeing them and hearing them talk politics, interact with them. I remember when I was young, because my uncle, I believe, and maybe either Para River or Bernard Wilshire, in 1978 or 79, went to the non-aligned conference in Cuba. And then that is where the Cuban scholarship program started. So the first cohort of students, actually, I think Severin Mackenzie, Panman, Bellot, these guys, actually went maybe 78, 79, maybe same year as Hurricane David. And when my uncle would go up, they would send back letters to their parents, or when he or my father was about to go to Cuba, they would bring stuff to be sent up. So I was involved. Uncle Rosie always used to have the Cuban newspaper called the Grandma. You know, so I grew up reading those things. That's my ideology and stuff, my whole political outlook and perspective was being shaped from that time. So I've been involved, you know, on a kind of behind the scenes kind of scene in Cuba and with the Cuban Revolution, even the Grenada Revolution. I lived in Grenada for some time. Actually, when Hurricane David struck Dominica in 1979, I had an aunt who subsequently died. She was a nun. Sister Pat was actually the principal of a convent in Grenada, in a place called Grenville, the second town. So she sent for three of us. Debbie, I told you about, who is Uncle Rosie's oldest daughter, Tiani's sister, myself, and another cousin called Sigmund McIntyre. Because I have an aunt who is married to a McIntyre. They live in Canada now. But three of us actually lived in the convent, and that's where my whole church and my spirituality and my Catholicism started actually developing. Because, you know, my family is very entrenched in the Catholic Church.
Yes.
You know, so I lived in Grenada for a couple of months. So during the Grenada Revolution. So my whole political orientation is left in my orientation. And I think I am I am mentally and psychologically ready for
Yeah.
Cuba. You know,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
I love that for you.
You know,
I love
I
that,
think
yeah.
the progressive movement throughout the region have gotten a rough shake, you know,
Yes.
because of the dominance and the prevalence of the U.S. in the background. You know,
Yeah.
the left movement has never been able to. Left has always had a stigma. Even when we were in opposition in the 80s, the Freedom Party and Eugenia Childs always called communists, and communists will close down church and this and that. And, you know, people were always afraid. That's why it took us so long to actually get back. And then when people recognize that Rosie was in fact ready, that's when they voted us in 2000, you know. So I think I am, and I think maybe that probably was some of the thinking in the Prime Minister's mind when he made his decision to appoint me as ambassador. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Good stuff. How would you like to be remembered? I have some speed round questions. How would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as a humble youth from Posse. Yeah, that's it. Humble youth
From Posse.
from Posse. That's how I
Okay.
want to be remembered.
I was
Trying to help my people to be everything that they can be, they should be,
Yes.
they ought to be, you know, helping the less fortunate, helping people that, you know, because of the unfortunate circumstance that they were born into, to show them and to make them know that, you know, how you're born doesn't necessarily have to determine how you live or how you
Yes.
die. You know,
Yes.
the world is your oyster. Go for it, especially now that you have a government that is doing everything in its power to elevate, you know, the less fortunate. So I just like to be remembered as a humble youth from Posse who made his contribution when he had the opportunity.
And earlier I was going to ask you, I tend to ask every guest, how would they sell their village? But I know we wouldn't leave here.
Oh, Posse is
So,
the best.
wait, wait, wait,
Posse is the best. I mean, come on. I mean, I have to sell. I have to sell Posse. Look at the picture we're looking at there on
I
the
know.
screen there now.
We have Prince here saying, I'm trying to wrap up, but I want to read. Prince says that Mr. Douglas was instrumental in winning the first Mr. Teen
That's
Dominica.
right. That's right. I tell you. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Man, yeah, man. Just,
And we
yeah.
have someone also saying, I really enjoyed listening in on this program. Mr. Douglas says I enjoyed, got my history lesson, and it was fun and enlightening.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
Though
we,
you-
and we didn't even touch on my law profession. You know,
I
like,
know,
you
because
it's-
I really just wanted people to. We know that you're a lawyer. We know
Yes,
that you're
yes.
a great politician. We know you're a historian. But I really wanted people to see
Yeah.
or know the person behind all of that.
Yeah,
So I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it also. But so through your travels of all over the world because of work, I guess you've been
Yeah.
everywhere. But is there one place that you would love to go that you haven't been as yet?
I haven't been. I want to go to more places in Africa.
Ah.
Yeah. I've been to Morocco, but I want to visit, you know, places like Nigeria
Ghana.
and Ghana.
Ah.
You know, I mean,
Yes.
those places. You know, I want to go to the coast where the slavery actually
Yes.
began. You know, I want to walk through the slave ports. You know, go there and really get the feeling of, you know, what people went through. You know,
Yes.
Africa is a continent I think that I want to visit.
Okay.
More than
Yes.
actually I have the
Okay.
opportunity to.
What mantra do you live by?
That life is short. Enjoy it.
Yes.
Enjoy every moment. You know, people think that life is a destination. So they keep saying, when I get to 70, when I retire, when I do this, I'll do that. No. I live my life one day at a time because life can end tomorrow morning. You know, so when you look back, you have to look back and say you have no regrets. Enjoy every
Yes.
bit of it. Try to, you know, love a lot, laugh a lot, and live a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's one healthy habit you practice?
I am an exercise freak. I try to exercise a lot. I do eat meat, you know. I started weightlifting and bodybuilding from the age 13. There's a guy in Possum called Nico. We used to have some old truck axles and stuff, and you know, so we used to go there. Me and some of my other colleagues, and I've been weightlifting in and out inadvertently, way up to even university. I'd go to the gyms. Even now, I have my bench at home. You know, I'd get up early in the morning when I can and go and walk down the Grange Road and jog it up. You know, myself and my wife, and you know, so I think it's important for people to try to live
Yes.
healthy. You know, I still think I maybe drink a little too much too. I need to maybe control that. But
For the worms.
you know, you have to take one for the stomach now and then. You know.
I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
turmeric. I know you live by that turmeric.
I mean bush. Yeah, man, I drink every but today somebody brought a bag of zooty for me. So I mix zooty and another bush called fei chim, and I make like a water
Yes.
with it that's good for the prostate. You know, and you drink that, and I'm into my herbs.
Yes.
You know?
What's your favorite food and your favorite fruit?
My favorite fruit is probably bananas. Yeah, I love banana. I love everything with banana. Banana cake, banana bread, fig in braff. You know, I maybe love bananas. I like I told you, I'm not too big on the meat. I'm not too big on rice and maybe pasta, all of that. I love plantains too. Fried
Yes.
plantain. And
That's a
boiled
banana.
I just love that. I plant a couple of trees in my yard, so every now and then they give me a bunch or two, and I have my little garden with my little lettuce and my
And plenty
cabbage
sweet
and-
potato.
Yes, and the sweet potato vibes, you know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Chocolate or vanilla?
vanilla.
Okay.
Vanilla.
I was going to ask you fig or dashing, but you answered that already.
Yeah, fig. Fig. Like the Dominican will tell you. Not banana, you know.
Fig.
That's right. And I love fish. I eat only fish.
Yes.
Actually.
Okay,
And,
so
and some wild meat now and then. Like a stew manico and abut. Yeah, I love that too.
What-
And I cook that myself, so.
yes,
Yeah.
we have people going off. I cannot read
Yeah.
any more comments now. I'll read one last one before I go.
Yeah.
But one thing about you that a lot of people may not know.
Mm-hmm.
What's one thing about you a lot of people may not know?
One thing about me that a lot of people may not know, I can be very soft-hearted.
I think everybody knows.
Everybody know that?
Yes.
Okay, well, all right. Yeah.
Yes, everybody know that.
Yeah.
Everybody know that. So let me read this one. Someone said, powerful interview tonight. Growing up, I enjoyed listening to Honorable Ian Douglas as a reporter, interviewing him, and now excited to see what his ambassadorship to the Republic brings. That's from Shannon John. We have someone else saying, good evening. They're watching from the United States. That's Martina Royer. And we have Ray Royer saying, Ian, you are a very humble servant. And I agree.
That's right. That's how Jesus Christ was, you know.
I agree.
Jesus Christ. You have to be humble because at the end of the day, we're all going to die. And you have to give account.
Yes.
When you reach up there, when the man asks you what you did with his life, you have to be able to say, you know.
Yeah, with his
So,
life. I like that.
Yeah, and all of us going to go 6 feet. You're going to go 6 feet, you have to die. So it doesn't make sense, you know, try to be more than you're not. You know, to be a good leader, you have to be a good servant.
Okay.
You must serve before. PM has a way he puts it nicely, you know. That I can't recall now, but in essence,
Yes.
what he said it outright, to lead people, you have to love people.
Yes.
And I believe to lead people, you have to be able to serve people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask any final words. That sounded like it.
That is, yeah.
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank
Very
you for
welcome.
being a
Yeah.
Dominican hero. Thank you. The people actually love you. They're here giving all their love and their praise. Thank you so much on behalf of Bio Out Loud and the people of Dominica. We thank you. Wish you all the best going forward in your
Thank you.
ambassadorship. And next up, we have Mr. Hassan Robinson with Streams of Consciousness. I am Julie Roberts, and this was another great episode of Bio Out Loud here on DBS Radio, part of the Whitey Kubuli Mondays. Our guest this evening was Honorable Ian Douglas, and it was definitely a good one. I enjoyed it. So until next time, tons of love. That was the last thing you said, right?
Yes.
You need to love. So tons of love.
Right.
And again, those who are mourning, we send our love and our heart with you this evening. Continue to be great, and until next time, bye-bye.